We have quite a weather system moving through the Pacific Northwest. There it is in Washington, Idaho, Oregon, Montana, and it's now crossing the Rockies. Here's how things are looking this afternoon at the top of Whistler, a mountain near Vancouver. And there's another webcam there at about 6,000 feet. I don't know, it looks like everything's closed. Maybe it's just too early in the season. And there's what we have for snow depth there. Looks like a lot of places in the mountains up around 50 to 100 centimeters, which is a couple feet there. And the Canadian Rockies also getting some of that snow. Also, we've definitely been filling in on snow in Nunavut, the Northwest Territories. Fresh covering of what looks like about 1 to 2 inches. And even more significantly, if you look at the GFS forecast, we are going to be filling that in quite a bit. Nunavut there, western part of the continental region, picking up 10 inches through a very wide area. And looks like another snowstorm heading inland in British Columbia for the weekend. So we're going to see an increase in polar air generation over the next couple weeks. And we may see the early winter patterns rearing their head pretty soon. Well, the key to all this is going to be in the 300 millibar level. And we see a very long zonal flow. And typically what we see with this flow when it's running 100 to 150 knots is it buckles and we get into a meridional pattern. And more often than not, what we see is ridging out west, and that tends to kick some polar air southward into the U.S. So you can see embedded in this, we're looking at Friday the 16th here. There's this one trough that's flattening out the ridge. The ridge is this huge thing right here. And you'll see that trough work down the backside of that ridge. See, there it goes right there. That's probably going to be one of our storms affecting the northern plains. Yeah, that's really digging in there by Sunday. And I think there's probably another trough here flattening out the ridge. Yep, there's another storm. So we're going to get a series of these Alberta clippers working into the U.S. in about a week. I'm not sure they're going to be particularly strong, but it will give us a taste of November, a little bit early. And then at the very end of the pattern, let's see, 240 hours out, 22nd, 23rd, we end up with this very large trough over the Great Lakes and a series of large waves on the west coast. So here's a couple of cold air factories. One is going to be the cold waters of the North Pacific. That's where we get our maritime polar air masses. And then our source regions for the continental polar air up in this region. And you're going to see this really get going over the next week or two. So let's run that forward. This is temperature anomaly at the surface. So going into midweek, you can see there's definitely a cool down in Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Montana. Then by late in the week, we're bringing cold air south into the central U.S., not quite to the east coast yet. That's going to be more towards the start of the weekend. And then a couple of blasts coming southward in this one. It looks pretty potent. This is around Saturday. That one comes down the South Plains into Monday, and you can see we're just generating quite a lot of cold air and sending that directly southward. Little gift from our friends up in Canada. So it is going to be cold over the next couple weeks east of the Rockies, and looks like it's going to remain warm in Arizona and New Mexico. We don't quite have that punch that we had a couple weeks ago that brought cold air into the Great Basin. This is more going towards the south and southeast. Does the European model beg to differ? Let's check it out. There's the blast of cold air coming down Thursday and Friday, and then the much colder surge of cold air coming down Saturday and Sunday into the North Plains. So what do we see from this? It looks like it is stalled along Interstate 44, which is kind of like up here. Not coming quite as far south as the GFS. Now the GFS does have a cold bias. The European model handled the last system a couple weeks ago much better, so I would probably have to lean towards this model. The next Alberta Clipper coming south late next week and not making much ground. So this is more of a scenario of cold air in the northern U.S., Canada, and not so much in the southern U.S. So we shall see. I suspect that this is going to be the solution, however. And then just a quick look at our storm tracks in the form of total accumulated precip. Well, the Great Lakes getting some rain, and once again on the 15th getting even more rain. This shows you that west to east storm track there. The Pacific system is working across the northern tier states. And then they interact with some tropical moisture in the eastern U.S., and we get some precip totals out that way too. But as far as the south central U.S. westward, it does look pretty dry. As far as Texas, probably a couple shots coming in around the 19th. It looks like a little interaction with tropical moisture there, and then another Pacific system entering the picture around the 24th, but that's a long ways away. The rain in the south around the 23rd, 24th, due to this cutoff flow, you're going to watch and see this kind of loop around like that. That comes into California. Now, there is going to be a lot of uncertainty about that. Cutoff flows are always a problem, but this may enter the picture around the 20th, 22nd, 23rd, and you see that open up in the Central Plains, and then we get this next system. This looks a little bit more like a typical late fall producer of MCSs. And then I'm seeing this thing here. That looks like a tropical storm. Let's see when that enters the picture. In fact, let's just look at the whole Caribbean. Yeah, this is really a long ways out, but you see this area of disturbed weather next Monday. See, this is already like a week away, so there's also uncertainty about this, but you see this coming together south of Jamaica and then moving up into the area south of Cuba. Pretty deep tropical cyclone, and moving into Florida around the 27th. Does the ECMWF have anything like that? Well, it doesn't quite really go out that far. So, no indication of that. Even by the 22nd, it's got the Caribbean pretty empty. But that's something we're going to have to watch out for in about a week. We'll check back on the Caribbean and see if things are indeed brewing down there. Anyway, let's check out weather around the U.S. today. In the southeastern U.S., the weather is affected by the series of receding high-pressure areas. These are minor Canadian outbreaks that move south and rapidly modify. There's the latest one, and you can see it's accompanied by this very dry air, 30s and 40s dew points. And even on the west side of the high, where we have the return flow, 40s dew points. So the moisture, even though it's lurking down to the south in Louisiana, it is mostly displaced by this air mass moving towards the south. And we don't even really have the return flow set up except around Uvalde, Del Rio, and out around Bakersfield. The Pecos River Valley, that's the very primordial bit of return flow heading north. But it's going to be cut off by this cold front that's moving south. Well, on the other hand, I would suspect that's going to stall, most likely. But anyway, in advance of it, yeah, 30s dew points. So you might be able to put kind of a weak dry line down along the Caprock, something like that, but not much moisture on the east side either. So no, I'm not going to draw a dry line, even though there's the convergence on that Caprock. Yeah, a lot of that moisture cleared out in the southeastern U.S. Looking at the visible satellite imagery, the only place where we have really deep tropical moisture is in southern Georgia and Florida right there, where you see the typical tropical cumulus streets. Little band of upper air clouds moving, well, let's be more specific. A little band of cirrus, maybe a little altocumulus mixed in there. That's moving across northeast Texas. And if we want to be specific, we've actually got this day cloud phase product right here. That's useful for differentiating ice from supercooled water clouds. So this is kind of a brown color. That's ice. And then it looks like this stuff here, that's probably supercooled water, maybe some stratocumulus. Anyway, that's another product you can use in your forecasting endeavors. Yeah, see that right there? That's definitely generating a lot different from the stuff that's just drifting west to east. In the northeastern U.S., we're seeing an outgoing frontal system drying in Pennsylvania and western New York, but out ahead of it looks like a very wet pattern. That looks like lots of tropical moisture in place into Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, with some very cold cloud tops. Let's look at that cloud phase product. This is pretty cool. You can distinguish the colder cumulonimbus tops there in New Hampshire, all the way down to Springfield, Massachusetts. And then beneath that, we've got the supercooled water clouds. That's just residual stratocumulus and maybe some altocumulus layers in between. There's a surface map for the northeastern U.S. Warm front making its advance there, Michigan and Pennsylvania. And what we see here in the northeast U.S., it looks like that area where we have that rain coming down, that's in a col, a C-O-L, which is kind of like the low point in a saddle. That's kind of like right in here. And that's where we have low pressure here, and then high pressure on the opposite corners. So it kind of puts this in a low point in a saddle. And as a result, we get kind of a very light wind flow. But that's the residual cold air that's been sitting over that part of the country. There's probably isentropic lift flowing up and over that part of the air mass, and as a result, we're getting vertical development of clouds and kind of an unstable atmosphere. Anyway, here's the next system coming through the Great Lakes. Doesn't look too cold. Temperatures behind it in the 50s and 60s. Definitely some warming going on. And let's check out the northwestern U.S. And there's what I have on that analysis. Looks to me like the warm sector is mostly in eastern Montana, and you go west of there or north of there, you get into cooler air. And this section here, this looks like the old occlusion. What we see here is a very classic anafront setup. Lots of air flowing back over the cold air mass. And you notice temperatures in the deserts of Washington much cooler than a couple of days ago. So there's been cold air flowing into this area here. The satellite, let's check that out. Yeah, that cloud phase product is kind of interesting because here we can see two different types of cloud systems. One is the reddish cirrus associated with the upper level dynamics flowing rapidly eastward, and then down below it we can see the altocumulus down here, the gravity waves. This is all at about 10 to 15,000 feet, some of it lower, and this is associated with that flow back up and over that anafront. So you can look at that right there and kind of visualize what's going on. So that's not so evident looking at the infrared imagery. It kind of looks like the same mass of cloud. If you look out over Wyoming, right in there, that's the middle cloud. It's not so obvious it's in there. Everything is dominated by this higher cirrus flowing through that region. Let's see what the visible imagery shows. Now here there's a little bit more distinction because the cirrus doesn't really overwhelm the product. You can kind of see through it and notice that there's a lot of cloud field that's not moving to the east like the cirrus cloud is. So yeah, there's all the flow coming towards the northwest into that deep Pacific system. So that's just one way that those multispectral products can actually give you a better handle on what's happening. And finally, for the southwestern U.S., quiet. As usual, that fire south of Mono Lake in the Sierra Nevadas looks like that is in better shape compared to yesterday. So about all that I'm really seeing here is the northern fringe of that system there, passing northern Nevada near Winnemucca, Elko, Wendover, And some of the mountain wave activity showing up around Boulder, Colorado, up to Cheyenne and into southern Wyoming. And there's a surface analysis for the southwestern U.S. High pressure in the Great Basin area out to Northern California, and that's more of a cool season pattern. That strong radiational cooling really dominating effects up in that region. Typically in the summer, when we have this tropical air mass in place, we see that heat low kind of building more into Nevada and Oregon, but that's not the case today. But it is warm in the southwestern U.S., 91 already at Phoenix, and 92 at Lake Havasu City. And I'm seeing 99 in, I don't know what station that would be. It's on the north tip of Salton Sea. There's our weather map this afternoon for Canada, Alaska, and Yukon, and Greenland. It's starting to look like a winter map. Very wound up system there in southern Nunavut, and they're really getting heavy snow right there on the west side of that low. Lots of lift and lots of moisture just flowing right up in there and giving them that 10 to 15 inch snow cover. And also we've got cold air developing up there in Alaska. You can see temperatures in Fairbanks around 20 to 23 Fahrenheit. Looks like around 34 in Anchorage, so that's definitely come down compared to a couple weeks ago. So we're generating that cold air, and it's flowing into Northwest Territories, Alberta, and Saskatchewan. And not only bringing some cold air south and chilling the surface, but also bringing dry air with low moisture content. And that can be a significant process in wet bulbing of air masses and generate even more cold air. And then a quick check in conditions there in Europe. Deep system there in southeast Poland, extending down into Moldavia, the Baltics, and then back there in France, we've got this 1009 millibar low, but that does not look to be baroclinic to me. That looks to be an old occlusion. You can see there's not really any temperature contrast on either side. So that's just kind of a low out there by itself. But up to the north, this is kind of significant. Lots of cold air coming down from the Scandinavian and far North Atlantic region. And that's given this deep northeasterly flow to Scotland. Temperatures in the 40s there, and that's also bringing down some slightly dry air, not particularly dry actually, but definitely on the cold side. Okay, and that's about all I got for this edition of Forecast Lab. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you do enjoy it, your support is appreciated. So I'll pop up this link. If we get you as a Patreon supporter, you will get access to the private Monday show. So that'll help fill you in with a little bit more weather knowledge and round out your week a little bit better. Okay, until next time, take care. Bye-bye.